Show me.
I'm the Martial Arts Film Freak, and I watched Game of Death 2. Game of Death 2 is a 1981 film directed by Si Yun-ung and actually has some co-directing parts that are uncredited with Sammo Hung and Corey Yuen, so that's actually pretty cool. I'm going to have to read off some names here because I'm not familiar with a good chunk of them, although I'm sure I've seen them in a lot of movies and I just never figured to learn their names. The film stars Bruce Lee. No, it doesn't. The film also stars Kim Tai-chung, Wang Jang Lee, Roy Horan, of course, Roy Chow, Hoi Song Lee, and then a whole bunch of other people, including like Casanova Wong and some other great martial artists hidden in there. Alright, so this movie is about... It's weird, it's complicated, it's different, it's odd, it's Bruceploitation. So Bruce Lee is back. Bruce Lee's back as Billy Lowe from Game of Death, a film he never finished because he died, which means he could never start working on this movie, so Bruce Lee's not actually in this movie, despite how much they want to make it look like he is. Embarrassingly, it doesn't work very well. Yes, Billy Lowe, Bruce Lee, is back, and his friend dies. His friend, who is this awesome kung fu master, passes away, and at his funeral, the casket gets taken by a helicopter using like a crane game kind of thing, like in an arcade, and they take the casket away. And Bruce Lee, Billy Lowe, jumps on. He won't let his friend's body go, and he jumps on and he's hanging onto the casket, and he hangs onto it until the helicopter gets really high, and then he falls, and then he dies. And then the movie is no longer about Bruce Lee, Billy Lowe. The movie is now about Bruce Lee's brother, Bobby Lowe. I mean, that's a smart way to, write off Bruce Lee. I mean, you pretty much just wrote him off like the way like a what is it called, a daytime drama would, soap opera. Yep. So kung fu movies and soap opera, one and the same, I guess. All right, so my thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts listed here. I've not watched many Bruceploitation films. In fact, I'd say the only actual Bruceploitation film I've seen is the original Game of Death, which is like an odd version of Bruceploitation because it is a Bruce Lee movie that they then used lookalikes and stand-ins. They didn't really look much like them to finish the movie, and they just put wigs and sunglasses and did bad camera angles on them and other horrible camera tricks. Yes, so let's get into these notes. The tricks they use to make it look like it's Bruce Lee are clever, also hilariously bad. They in any scene where it's supposed to be Billy Lowe, the Bruce Lee character, Kim Tai-chung, who plays both roles, is simply dressed in a familiar article of clothing that Bruce Lee wore in older movies, in actual Bruce Lee movies. And the reason he's dressed in similar articles of clothing is so that they can cut to those older films and use certain angles of Bruce Lee that may or may not have been in those other films to make it look like Bruce Lee is actually there in that scene. This does not work most of the time, especially because a lot of the time you're seeing like the back of his head because that's Kim Tai-chung, and anytime they cut to a forward shot, that's a shot from another movie. Yeah. They also like do this like backstory part where they're like telling the backstory of Billy Lowe and telling like how he was as a child. And so they actually start playing like black and white footage from old like childhood Bruce Lee movies when he was a childhood actor, and that was like jarring because they're just throwing dub over like existing video. And they do the same thing with like other Bruce Lee footage. Like they show the footage of like Enter the Dragon when Bruce Lee is training the kid And he's like, how did that feel? And that whole thing. And they just dub over different words. It was shocking. And if you've seen the first Game of Death, you know that they used like a lot of like actual Bruce Lee funeral footage. And it's like sickening how much of that footage they actually use. Even though the whole time I was watching this and thinking this feels kind of gross, at least it's not as gross as using actual funeral footage. But no! When Billy Lowe dies, they again use actual funeral footage. So yes, they kill off Billy Lowe when he dies, which originally I thought was crazy, but in the end, as I said earlier, smart idea, good. Stop using Bruce Lee footage. Now it's just Kim Tai-chung. Kim Tai-chung is your main character. He is Bobby Lowe. He will now lead this franchise. Not bad idea. I mean, the way you killed him off was bad, but end result, fine. Now Bobby Lowe has to find out why his brother died and like what is up with this helicopter that tried to take the body, and he's just got to investigate, which leads to more fight scenes, which are mostly fine fight scenes. Roy Horan gets a good fight against a couple guys. At one point, Bobby Lowe, Kim Tai-chung fights a man in a lion suit. We learn that Roy Horan, who is the Tiger King in this? We're still in the pandemic. We can talk about Tiger King, even though that was 6 months ago. This pandemic's been so long. He has this huge amount of land. He has peacocks and he has lions and a whole bunch of animals, I think. And so this lion bursts through Bobby Lowe's window. And there's this point in kung fu movies where you think, okay, is this supposed to be a lion? Because this is the best they could do. It's a man in a lion suit with a pretty convincing, like, lion head. So is Bobby Lowe actually fighting a lion, or is this supposed to be a man in disguise as a lion? This was a weird fork in the road situation that my brain ended up in, and it ended up being the latter. This was actually a man in disguise as a lion. This wasn't actually supposed to be an interpretation of Bobby Lowe actually fighting a lion. I can't believe I'm talking about this. This feels bizarre. Before this, I need to talk about this before I really get into like my real ideas on the action. This has like the most awkward like nude scene. Like every Bruce Lee movie has a nude scene that usually ends up being kind of weird. But in this one, I'm sorry if I just breathed on the mic and that makes an awful noise. In this one, Bobby Lowe encounters a naked woman who comes to his room. And, like, it just immediately cuts to Bobby Lowe, Kim Tai-chung, looking, like, sweaty and nervous. But it also cuts to what he's thinking about, and it cuts to, like, a Kama Sutra-like book that he was reading. And it's really odd, because I don't feel like Bruce Lee ever put nudity in his movies to make it look like he's, like, a ladies' man. Like, in Big Boss, Bruce Lee sleeps with a woman because they got him drunk. In Way of the Dragon, there's a nude scene where like Bruce Lee like just sees a naked woman and leaves. And this just was a weird interpretation of that kind of situation, and I did not like it. But further into the action. Okay, so the fight scenes in this are they're definitely trying to mimic Bruce Lee's movements, and while they succeed in that point, I don't think they're actually accomplishing the choreography style of a Bruce Lee fight scene. They went much more just straight up Hong Kong acrobatic, and that may be because they maybe couldn't do a Bruce Lee style fight scene justice, which the fight scenes ended up being fine, but if they were going for a straight up Bruce Lee fight scene, I don't think they quite accomplished that. And sadly, I don't think there's actually like a fight scene that like is memorable for me. Like each of them has like a few moments, but they're nothing crazy. They're sort of standard fare for the time, which is very good. Standard fare is still like top-notch stuff. Maybe it's definitely worth checking out for some of the fight scenes. I just don't think many of them are actually going to stick in my brain because they don't really do anything to actually stand out much. I was really hoping Huang Zhang Li would get some really great stuff to do because the few Huang Zhang Li fights I've seen have been fantastic. And Roy Horan gets some really cool stuff. I was hoping he would get to do more, and he did not. And then Hoi San Lee, I could be wrong about that name. Let me check out this name one more time because I like that guy. He is great in 36 Chamber. He's my favorite character in 36 Chamber. Hoi San Lee, yes. He was fine. He was a monk again. Yeah. that's just kind of how I felt about almost all the fight scenes. I was like, yeah, this is fine. This is exactly as good as it should be, but it could be way better. Which that kind of is how I feel about this entire movie. There is nothing great. There's nothing even very good. It's either cringy, almost bad, to just fine. So in the end, I think I'm going to give Game of Death 2, aka Tower of Death, 2.5 Bruce Lee doubles out of 5. There's also what's his name? Yuan Biao is in this. Yes, 2.5 out of 5. It's like it's worth checking out for some of the fight scenes, but you're not probably gonna remember it like a week later. What do you think? Have you seen Game of Death 2, Tower of Death, whichever name you choose to call it? This movie also got very sci-fi in the end. That was very weird. Like the tower is like very futuristic. Tell me what you thought in the comment section down below. Have you seen it? What did you think of the movie? And what did you think of my review? If you haven't seen it, are you going to check it out? I'm not sure if it's on a streaming service or not. I've got a box set that I've had for over a decade, and I've just never watched Game of Death 2, and it's on there, and I finally watched it. So I finally watched all the movies on that box set. Tell me what you thought in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and have a good day.